Take a second and really let this question sink in. What if the entire equation of wealth and happiness is written completely backward? What if wealth isn't the cause of joy at all, but actually just its shadow? See, we've been so heavily programmed by our environments, by families who struggled, by voices whispering things like, money doesn't grow on trees, or we definitely can't afford that. And without even realizing it, we built this massive, invisible fortress of limiting beliefs all around ourselves.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've all been sold this deeply ingrained societal lie that money brings happiness. But the ultimate truth is quite literally the opposite. Happiness brings money. And according to the creator of The Secret, Rhonda Byrne, and host Lewis Howes, this isn't just some abstract, feel-good philosophical concept. It is a fundamental law of how energy actually operates. Think about it. If you're sitting around waiting for money to arrive so you can finally feel happy, you are entirely closing off your energetic field to the exact abundance you're asking for. This brings us to a silent epidemic we all suffer from, which is unworthiness. And sitting right at the center of this unworthiness is the ego. The ego is this deeply programmed mindset, and its middle names are quite literally lack and fear. It's that nagging voice in your head telling you that you're destined to not have very much, or that you have to suffer immensely just to earn a decent living. It convinces us of this ultimate limitation, that money can only come to us through our jobs. When we believe we only get money from one single, narrow avenue, we're essentially taking the infinite possibilities of the universe and choking them down to a single, fragile thread.
Act 1, the magnetism of joy. And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually break free from these invisible bars. We have to look at the physical world and see how energy literally pays off. Just think about the service industry for a second. Research, and honestly just real-world evidence, show that when a waiter, a barista, or a bellhop is joyful, smiling, and genuinely happy, they receive significantly larger tips. Why is that? Because genuine joy elevates the energy of the entire space. If a worker is negative, mean, or frustrated, customers just don't reward them. Joy acts as a completely natural magnet. People naturally want to reward, pay, and see you succeed when you bring a kind of energy into their lives that they crave more of. But on the flip side, we have this profound, kind of scary truth. If you keep thinking that you need money, you will keep attracting the state of needing money. When we exist in this clenched, tight state of fear, depression, or frustration, we physically and energetically close our field. We broadcast a huge signal of lack. You see, the universe doesn't hear our words. It responds to our state of being. By constantly obsessing over our lack, we are silently calling into our lives exactly what we fear the absolute most. Act 2, the architecture of deservability. Now, what's really interesting here is that understanding the magnetism of joy is really only the first step. We also have to address those deep psychological traumas and blocks that make us actively push wealth away. Because if you don't feel you deserve the wealth, your nervous system will literally reject it before it even arrives. As Oprah Winfrey brilliantly put it, you being alive makes worthiness your birthright. So many of us have gone through heartache, manipulation, feeling like we're at the bottom of the class, or just feeling completely alone. We've collected all this evidence over the years that we aren't good enough. But actually, scratch that. The real truth is you are an unlimited being. You do not have to earn the right to exist in abundance. It is yours simply because you are here. So to actively reprogram that sense of worthiness, Lewis Howes shares a super powerful 3-step framework. First, write down and act on your fears weekly. For example, Lewis was absolutely terrified of public speaking and salsa dancing. So what did he do? He stood in a salsa club for 3 months, literally trembling in the corner, until he finally forced himself out onto the floor. And he realized his fear was entirely imagined. Nobody was laughing at him. Second, keep your word and your commitments to yourself. And third, shift from a taker mentality to living in total generosity. Contribute a smile, a listening ear, or just your time. Generosity is what opens the portal to abundance. But you have to remember, self-doubt kills more dreams than anything else on the entire planet. When we consistently break our own commitments, like when we say we're going to do something and then we just don't, our body and our nervous system actually start to view us as a fraud. If you can't trust yourself, you're never going to feel worthy of success. You'll just stay trapped in that cycle of scarcity simply because your own nervous system doesn't believe a word you say. Act 3, the alchemy of play and gratitude. So the crucial point is, this is where we shift gears entirely and bring in the concrete tools for transformation. As the philosopher Alan Watts observed, instead of calling it work, realize it is play. Think about it, we hold so much stressful, rigid, tense energy around money. We talk about it in hushed tones, we stress over literally every penny, and we completely restrict our flow. Injecting playfulness into this is a revolutionary strategy. It completely, utterly eliminates financial resistance. Take this number, for example, $150,000. When Rhonda Byrne was creating The Secret, she was massively in debt. Her credit cards were totally maxed out. She'd get these window-face bills in the mail and just feel absolute dread. But she decided to play a game. She opened a dreaded $1,200 bill, and instead of crying about it, she pretended it was a check. She literally celebrated. Then, because $1,200 didn't feel exciting enough, she took a marker and just kept adding zeros until it became an imaginary $150,000 check. Because guess what? The universe doesn't know the difference between what's real and what is vividly, intensely imagined. She completely transformed how she handled her bills, and we can too. First, pretend they're checks to instantly shift the energy. Second, when she finally did pay the bill, she imagined she was making this incredibly generous donation to the company. She visualized that her money was going to feed the employees' families and pay their mortgages. Suddenly, paying a bill went from being this painful, awful loss to a joyful act of giving. And finally, she would physically write "Thank you paid" right across the statement. Doing this causes all that tight, anxious resistance we hold around money to just completely melt away. Or consider the absolutely incredible story of Jim Carrey. Back when he was a broke comedian driving his beat-up car up Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles, he played his own version of this game. He playfully wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered. He dated it for Thanksgiving 1995 and just kept it right there in his wallet. He was completely broke, but he engaged in the play of abundance anyway. And right before Thanksgiving 1995, he found out he was going to make exactly $10 million for the movie Dumb and Dumber. No way, right? But it's true. Let's see how this builds into crafting your own reality through something called a desires list. It's super simple. First, write down exactly what you desire. You don't need to justify it to anyone. The law of attraction does not care about your reasons. It only cares about your feelings. Second, genuinely imagine you have just received it. And third, visualize yourself jumping for joy in less than 30 seconds. Rhonda actually put a trip to Bora Bora on her list. Sometime later, sitting on a tiny plane filled with joyful, laughing locals, she looked around with tears in her eyes and realized she had manifested exactly what she'd written down. The legendary Bob Proctor used to say, "If you see it in your mind, you will hold it in your hand." Imagine you possess this magic pen. Anything you write down with total, unwavering belief and joy will come to pass. If you can just overcome that heavy, fearful programming of your ego, you literally become the author of your own reality. Now, of course, doing this when life is really throwing punches is incredibly challenging. Dr. Wayne Dyer urges us to be thankful for the storms as well as the smooth sailing. And wow, is it hard to be grateful when you feel broke, abandoned, or totally defeated. But finding the hidden gifts in your most painful moments is the absolute fastest way to change your vibration. Gratitude isn't just some spiritual fluff. It's a mechanical lever that shifts you right out of lack and right back into flow. Ultimately, you're always operating from one of two states. The suffering state is built on anger, resentment, lack, and doubt. And hey, you can absolutely hustle and make money from a suffering state. Plenty of people do it every day. But it only leads to massive internal conflict. You'll have the money in the bank, sure, but you will still be completely miserable. On the other hand, the beautiful state, which is characterized by joy, gratitude, acceptance, and flow, effortlessly attracts ultimate abundance without that agonizing internal war. So we arrive at the final question for this explainer. Will you remain a prisoner to the illusion of lack, buying into that tired societal lie that you simply must suffer to deserve wealth? Or will you pick up your magic pen, embrace the alchemy of play, and choose joy today to manifest the abundance of tomorrow? The universe is just waiting for your energy to shift. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the alchemy of abundance. Take these tools, go out there and play the game, and start creating your beautiful state today.